chosen to join in with me live, or maybe you're watching the recording for this webinar. So you might think, what are we going to talk about for the next 45 minutes to an hour when it comes to research? That's going to be so boring. Well, there's some aspects that you might consider boring, but I'm going to hopefully bring it to life to you so that you can consider how you can take guesswork and make that into a growth journey for you, and you can use research to power your enrollment strategy. So that's what this is all about. A little bit about myself. My company is Enrollment Catalyst, and I work with schools primarily all over the United States, helping them with their enrollment and marketing plans and strategies. I have worked with well over 500 schools in 46 different states, several outside of the country over the last 15 years. And so it's been a great journey to be able to help schools like yours, primarily through my Enrollment Catalyst program and also through my school survey solutions, which is really relevant to the conversation today. That's been a very busy start to this year. You can see a number of the school site visits that I've conducted. I always take my famous selfie. And in fact, next week I'm going to be at a school in St. Louis. And then a couple weeks later, I'm going to be out in San Diego, and then on up the coast in California. And then there's some other schools that are in the works right now. So my schedule is usually pretty busy in terms of my travel and working with schools, and also through my individual coaching, as well as the survey solutions that I provide along the way. And you may know me from my other persona, and that's being part of the Enrollment Marketing Geeks. That's where I align and partner with Andy Lynch from Tassel Marketing, and we conduct a lot of training. We have a regular ongoing show and tell show where we talk about specific strategies, and we give you real life examples of how this is working in other schools. And so we have a couple coming up. You can see the one on environmental branding, which is everything about what are you putting on your walls to be able to communicate your school and tell the story of your school. I call them story stops. So strategic places along the way on your campus tour that you can stop and tell the story that is supported by a visual display. So you may want to join us for that upcoming show and tell show. And then in October, we have one on social media strategies. So very relevant as we look at how to use social media to be able to continue to tell the story of your school. So look forward to those shows. In fact, you can find all of our previous shows on our Enrollment Marketing Geeks website, and you can have access to any of the recordings that we've done in the past. And then we also provide on-site training through conferences and workshops. So make sure you follow us. We've got so many irons in the fire in terms of what we're doing and how we're helping schools with their enrollment and marketing strategies. So today we're going to talk about research and how that can really empower your enrollment and marketing strategy. And so this is just the beginning slide for this conversation to think about how you can start with insight and not assumptions. And that's really what research will do for you. And I believe that schools that stop to listen first will be the ones who thrive. They're going to be able to make better decisions about their community because they know what their community is thinking and how they feel about different aspects of their school. And also it's going to help you lead towards smarter decisions in your planning. So you're going to be able to use that data that you've collected through your research process to be able to guide you into making better decisions. And the reality is that what gets measured gets improved along the way. So it's those metrics that we're taking a look at, and we're determining what areas we need to focus in on for improvement. And I'm going to talk more about that along the way. So think about it. What do you really know about your school, and what do you just assume about your families? You know, maybe there's assumptions that you've made along the way that aren't rooted in research, and that's where research can step in and help you better understand your parent population or your employees or whatever groups you're trying to target. By the way, I wanted to mention here in the very beginning that this is the first time I created a slide deck using an AI program called Gamma. So this is a program that you can access and you can pay for, and that's what I did. Basically what I did is I created a comprehensive outline for this presentation in terms of the content that I wanted to share. And then I used the program to build out my slide deck. So what you're gonna see here is my thinking, but it's been crafted in a way or put together in a way that's visually compelling. All the images that you see are created in AI. Now, certainly I could have played with it more and been able to, enhance the look and feel of some of the images, but it gives you a feel of how quickly you could put together a slide deck. And again, I did that through that program called Gamma. But that's a little aside to the conversation today. So what does research do? It really helps you solve a problem and answer a question. That should be the driving initiative behind the research that you're going to conduct, because it's going to help you clarify what's unknown. So think about a problem or a question that you may have. It could be, one of those 4 questions that I have listed there. Why are your families not returning to your school? So you could have hunches and perspectives as to why that might be the case in terms of the reasons, but you need to do some research to be able to collect that information. What do new families value most in their decision? Why did they choose your school? Which marketing strategies are working the best? Why is our enrollment declining? I often get called on this one all the time as schools reach out to me and say, we're having an enrollment challenge. We need to solve this issue because we can't keep declining. We have to find a way to turn it around. And one of my initial approaches is to find out what is going on. Why is the school declining in its enrollment? Because it's usually a complex set of issues that are contributing to the problem. So think about it. What problems and what issues, what questions are you trying to answer right now in your enrollment work? In fact, you may want to just drop that into the question bank here. And if I have time at the end, I'll be able to try to approach some of your challenges and questions from a research perspective as to how you might tackle that along the way. And if you do have a question, feel free to drop that in as well as we go along. So here's some pros and cons of your approach to school research. So I just wanted to set this out for you in the beginning. Certainly you can do everything that you want in-house. You have the familiarity, I can't say that word right now, I don't know why. Sometimes my mouth gets tongue-tied as my brain's thinking faster than I can actually talk. But you have, that concept of what your school culture is like, what your people are like. There's gonna be a lower initial cost, obviously, if you can do it in-house, but you may lack that objectivity or expertise. It may be time consuming. You're adding that on to an already very busy plate for you. There may be some bias along the way. I mean, your internal, you have your own internal perspective as to what you're seeing in the school. So sometimes you need to hire that consultant. And this is not a sales pitch. It's really an opportunity for you to look at the benefits of both, because both are valuable. But you do need to consider at times bringing in a consultant. Someone that's going to have that external perspective. They're going to be more objective. They're going to bring in tools and design format. They're going to have credibility with your families and boards. I mean, how many times have you been saying something to your leadership at your school and it just goes unheard, and then the outside guy, like a consultant like me, comes in, says the same thing, and they're like, oh yeah, that's something we should do. It's kind of mind-blowing at that point, but it's the reality of how things work. And obviously there's going to be a cost involved to hiring someone on the outside to be a consultant. But the bottom line is you need to think about, what's the real cost of not having strong research in place that's going to guide your enrollment and marketing plan. So you need that. You need to have an annual plan for research in your school. Here's some pitfalls to avoid. So just relying upon anecdotes. We hear those stories from, the loud parents about what's going on and their concerns in their world. And, just because they're loud doesn't mean that that's a pattern and theme throughout the entire school community. So that's where you need to look at it from a research perspective. Is this a valid concern, or is this person just really vocal? And it seems like because they're vocal that everybody else must be feeling the same way. You can't just rely upon anecdotes. You need to be able to look at it from a research perspective. Are there true patterns and themes of issues that we need to try to solve? Or you can let bias creep in. That's how you're asking the questions of how you're even interpreting the results. Maybe you're just asking too much on a survey, and that can lead to poor conclusions, confused analysis. Maybe you're failing to act. Maybe you've been collecting data in the form of surveys or research that you conducted, but you haven't really done anything with it. So what good is a survey and the results if you don't use it? So that's like one of the worst things that you could do, or not responding back. So the parents invest in a process. They go through and they complete a survey, but you never report back to them what you found. In fact, there should be some positive things that you're sharing back to that key stakeholder group, as well as key initiatives that you're wanting to put in place. So think about your situation. Maybe you've experienced some of these pitfalls, and it's important to try to avoid these, obviously, as you move forward. So research is going to fuel your strategy. And so research is the beginning point. It's going to help you by gathering the data through surveys, focus groups, analytics, whatever it may be, to try to understand your audience. And then from that research, you're going to collect and analyze findings that are going to give you that insight. So you're going to look for patterns, needs, opportunities, whatever it may be that are unique to your school. What is the research telling you? What insights do you have from that? That's going to help inform your strategies. So if you know what the data is telling you, you understand the insights, what you're gleaning from that, that's going to help direct you in specific strategies. And I'm going to give you some more specifics on this, but I wanted to lay out how research fuels your strategy. And then you lead to action. So that's where you're going to actually implement specific tactics that address the actual needs in your community. So let's say you're involved in research and you're trying to find out what's going on with why families aren't continuing from preschool into kindergarten. So you might do a survey of your pre-K families to assess the likelihood that they're going to continue on. That's going to give you some insight into reasons why they would or why they wouldn't be continuing. You're going to look for those patterns and themes. Maybe you'll see through that. One of the insights would be that they just don't know what it's like at the next level. They haven't been informed or communicated with, or maybe they have a perspective that it's really unaffordable at that point. The price really jumps. So there's some misconceptions. And so that's where you'd put some strategies in place where you might want to overcome the lack of communication or the lack of internal marketing. And you might implement some specific tactics along the way that is really going to drive your actions with your enrollment and marketing effort to try to increase the likelihood that those preschool families are going to stay for kindergarten. And you could do that on throughout. So as you think about it, what drives or limits your school's growth? So there's always a complex set of issues. I was actually talking to a school yesterday, and they were sharing with me that their enrollment has been declining. And one of the things that they've seen is that the number of inquiries or leads coming in have decreased. So that's the challenge, that's the issue. There may be a lot of factors that are affecting that. Maybe it's externally related. So it could be the location that they're in. I mean, they talked about a lot of competition that's increased in their community through charter schools. So there's some issues with location and the demographics. Maybe there's economic issues that are affecting, the price tag of the school is pretty high. So looking at that could be a barrier to families expressing interest in the school. So you look at all those external factors, those are really out of your control, outside of your control. What you have control over is more what's going on inside the school. So it could be a complex set of issues there. Maybe there's issues with leadership. Maybe you don't have the right people in the right seats, not only in admissions and marketing, but also in particular, divisions of your school in the classroom. Maybe there's issues with what you're actually providing in terms of your program distinctiveness, and on down the line. So there could be, again, a lot of internal factors that are limiting your enrollment growth, or maybe it's driving it in a positive way. So you can look at all those from a positive perspective. So think about it. What's an internal factor that can most impact your enrollment this year. Maybe it's unique to what you're experiencing this year in your school. And that would be something that you would want to dive into a little bit more. This morning, I put out a thought leadership post on LinkedIn about leadership. I believe that enrollment can rise or fall based upon leadership. And if you want to follow some of my thought leadership in the space of enrollment marketing, follow me on LinkedIn, and I will be sharing, and I have been sharing quite often, about different topics related to enrollment and marketing. And so in this thought post here, I talk about the effects of weak leadership. You can't market your way out of weak leadership. You know, the strategy may look good on paper, but you need to have strong leadership behind it. And then I talk more about that along the way. So look at those factors. It's going to affect your enrollment and marketing effort. So as you look at your parent population, that's one of the main groups that you're going to want to conduct research. So what insights do you need most out of these groups? And I like to break it down into like at least 3 different categories. So you would have your current families. And what's important to measure with your current families? You want to understand satisfaction. How do they feel about the experience? Is it worth what they're paying for? Do they enjoy their experience for their child? Is their child learning and growing and developing? So you could do that across the board for your school community. You could focus in on specific divisions. We'll also talk about the Net Promoter Score and how that can contribute to understanding the health of your school. So understanding your current parents. There's more to it than just that, but it just gives you a snapshot overview. New families. These are the families who just selected your school. So why did they choose your school? What did they see in the marketing effort? What influenced them? Think about the admissions process and how they would evaluate it. So evaluating from their perspective why they chose your school and the process that they went through is very, very important. The same with departing families. These are families who made the choice to choose your school. They've been in your school for some time, and for some reason, they're leaving. So why are they leaving? You need to be able to collect that data to be able to understand what's happening, especially if you have a retention issue within your school. So think about it. Which audience do you understand the least? And which one would you want to tackle maybe this year? Maybe you need to really invest in all 3 and trying to understand their thoughts and perspectives and really gleaning those insights from your parent community. So here's a question for you. Do you have an annual research and feedback plan at your school? In fact, I want to try a poll here, and we're going to take this question, and I'm actually going to pop it up here, and you're going to have a chance to be able to answer this question because I want to see your feedback. So you should see the poll on your screen. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to be able to answer this. And then we're going to take a look at where at least the live group is with your perspectives on, do you have an annual research and feedback plan? So, all right, looks like everybody has finished here. So we're going to close the poll, and I'm going to share the results. And so a little over half of you have a plan in place. That's great. But the other half, either you don't know or you don't have a plan in place. So as we think about it, that gives us a great opportunity to be able to put an annual research and feedback plan in place in our schools. So great little sample poll. That's roughly what I find. You know, half have some kind of plan. For those of you who didn't know, the 14% of you, you know, find out. Is there a plan? Does your head of school, does your administrative team have a plan in place to be able to guide you in your research process? So let's talk about different ways that you can conduct research. And again, this feels like a graduate course in some respect. I went to Michigan State University for my PhD program, and my focus was on qualitative research. So had certainly a number of classes dealing with that topic, but surveys we're all used to. And there's 5 practical ones that I would recommend that you put in place in your school. I'm going to talk just a little bit about each one of these. But a new family survey, now's the time to be able to do this. A net promoter score survey that measures the strength of your school's word of mouth from your parents, their loyalty. The exit survey we were just talking about, those families who are leaving your school. The overall parent satisfaction survey, and as well as the employee satisfaction survey. That's important as well to understand how your employees think and feel about your school. So if you don't have a plan, or you do have a plan, measure it up against this. This is what I always recommend to school leaders, that you put this plan in place to be able to drive your research effort. So your survey design, it needs to include a combination of quantitative and qualitative questions. Big words. Quantitative has numbers attached to it. Usually it's based upon a rating scale, like a Likert scale, from very satisfied to very dissatisfied. They select how they feel about a particular area, and then you're able to look at a mean score. What's the average score? So like I use 5-point scales all the time in my survey questions, and I'm always looking for a score of 4-point and higher. 4-point is satisfied, 5-point is very satisfied. At least that's how I do it with my surveys. Qualitative questions are the open-ended questions. So that's where you may ask an open-ended question. What do you like best about your school? What are some areas that we need to improve upon? That's an example of a qualitative question. It gives you this rich description. In some cases on surveys, you'll get several paragraphs from specific parents that just want to go on and on and on. Believe me, I have read through hundreds and hundreds of surveys and have seen these types of responses from parents. But it gives you an opportunity to be able to understand from more of a what's called a thick description, where they can write out their thoughts and perspectives on that. So both of those questions are very valuable in a survey design, and it's going to give you an opportunity to look at that total picture of what's going on in your school. A new parent survey we've been talking about, let's dive into that a little bit more. It gives you an opportunity to really understand the why behind it, why parents chose your school this year. You can look at how they discovered your school. I mean, to be able to assess how they first heard about your school. Do they see any of your marketing and advertisements that you put out there that you invested money in? You can evaluate the admissions process. You can also evaluate, your marketing strategy. So a parent survey that's targeting new families is very, very valuable. I want to do another poll here and basically ask you if you've conducted a new parent survey this year, because now's the time to do it. And so here's the poll. Have you conducted a new parent survey this year? So select yes or no, it's not yet, but it's planned, it's coming, or no, it's not planning, you're not planning on conducting one at all. So give you another couple seconds. Looks like most of you have completed the survey here, and let's look at the results and see what you shared here. So have you conducted a new parent survey yet this year? 42% of you said you have. 49% said not yet, but it's planned, so that's good. Only 9% said you're not planning on conducting one. So this is great. Maybe you've been watching me and listening to me and reading my blog post along the way about the importance of being able to conduct a new survey. So again, it would be trying to answer all these different questions that you see here on the screen. And I believe now's the time to do this. I'm conducting a number of new family surveys right now for schools I'm working with. You get that insight and perspective at the beginning of the year to be able to evaluate their process that they've just gone through. Another important question or type of survey to measure loyalty and word of mouth potential is the Net Promoter Score question. So if you're familiar with that question, it's basically on a scale from 0 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how likely would you be to recommend your school to a friend in the community? So it's on a 10-point scale. If they score a 9 or a 10, they're considered to be a promoter. This is where you want the bulk of your respondents. If they're a 7 and 8, they're passive. They're likely satisfied, but they're not going to go out of their way to talk about word of mouth. There may be some issues that are affecting that score. You have to be most concerned with your detractors. These are parents who score 0 to 6. Usually there's some dissatisfaction, they're unhappy in some way, and they may share negative experiences in the community. So the way the net promoter score is determined, you take the percentage of promoters and you subtract the percentage of detractors. That's going to give you a numerical score between positive 100 and negative 100. If you scored a positive 100, that means everybody who completed the survey is a promoter. I haven't seen that, but I have seen scores as high as 85 or 90. If you scored and at your school it was a negative 100, that means everybody's a detractor. Your school probably won't be around next year. It's going to close down. In fact, I have conducted these surveys and I've seen scores in the negative numbers. And unfortunately, some schools have closed the next year because marketing isn't about fixing what's broken. It's actually about showcasing the health of a school. And so if there's issues, and this would show me if there's issues within a school community just by this one score alone, this is pretty significant. And so the way I encourage schools to be involved in conducting a net promoter score survey is to do this mini type of survey late October, early November, usually around the end of the first quarter. And then also to include the question in the comprehensive satisfaction surveys. There's also follow-up questions if you're building this out correctly. And I've been through extensive training on how the Net Promoter Score survey works. So you would ask a follow-up question based upon their score to determine or to give them an opportunity to share what needs to be changed if they're a detractor for them to be able to score it higher. And so you're able to learn a lot just by asking a couple key questions. Your parent and employee surveys are important. And so usually what I recommend is that you use the springtime to be able to conduct a comprehensive survey with your parents and also one with the employees. And that's going to give you an opportunity to measure the experience that they had during the school year. And so that's going to be very, very important to be able to collect that information. I do recommend that you do this every year so that you have benchmarks and trends, and you could look at what's going on from year to year. You can hopefully see improvements or maybe areas that you slipped back on. So to have this survey in place gives you that annual snapshot. And I like to do it again toward the end of the school year because that gives them an opportunity to reflect over the entirety of the year. And then also you want to consider why families leave. We talked about that a little bit earlier, and then it relates to those families who are making the decision not to return the following year. What's your process of conducting an exit survey? So I believe that ideally you want to meet with that person, that parent one-on-one, or you want to talk to them on the phone, but they may not tell you everything. So that's why a survey might be beneficial to you to be able to glean from the parent who's leaving your school, because you really want to dive in and learn why the parent has decided not to return or re-enroll, where they're heading next year. Is there anything that we could have done differently? Would they even consider returning in the future? Whenever I conduct an exit survey, my first question is an opportunity for them to be able to share their name if they want to. Otherwise, it can be completely anonymous. I find that 75 to 80% of the parents who complete the survey share their name. And so that gives you great information because you can compare that against what they've been telling you. And if you use an outside vendor or consultant, then you have more objectivity to it. They're going to feel less threatened by potentially telling you what's going on with the reason why they're not returning. So as you look at these opportunities to be able to conduct surveys, there's some key indicators of a healthy school that I'm looking for. So whenever I am conducting that comprehensive parent satisfaction survey, I'm looking for scores that are above a 4.0 on a 5-point scale. That tells me that parents are satisfied. There's usually a couple areas that are below that key mark. Hopefully there's not a long list. But we're looking for parents who have that comprehensive feel of satisfaction. Strong word of mouth, I'm always looking for a score of 50 or higher. That tells me that we have families who believe in the school and they're actively promoting your school to the community. And so that's where you want the bulk of your respondents. And so that score of 50 or higher is a key indication to me. Engaged school culture, this is where you might ask a question, what are their plans for their child to graduate and go all the way through? I'm at least looking for around 75%, if not higher. Think about it, some of the families they have young kids, preschool, kindergarten, first, second grade. They may not know what's going to happen 10, 12 years from now. So that's why I use the 75% mark. If I'm measuring retention alone, looking at your retention stats, I want a retention rate of 90% or higher. That's going to tell me that your school is healthy, that parents are willing to stay and pay within your school community. Now, besides surveys, you can also use focus groups. This focus groups gives you an opportunity to sit down with a group and you can conduct your qualitative research by asking questions. And I do this all the time. So here's how I do it. I'm giving you insight into my approach and how I work with schools. So like next week, I'm going to be at a Lutheran middle and high school in St. Louis. And so I'm going to be conducting some focus group meetings. So typically I ask the school leadership to provide groups between 5 to 8 participants. And so there will be some parent groups, there'll be some student groups, some faculty groups. So there may be some common issues that a school is working on, and they may put a specific group together. I keep my focus groups to 60 minutes, and I have a pre-designed set of questions typically that I'm using as my guide and framework, as my roadmap throughout that conversation. And so I'm the neutral, objective moderator that's been brought in to be able to conduct these focus groups, and they're sharing with me. And I'm taking notes on my computer. I've actually gone to another backup approach. I'm using this little recording device called Plod. When I have permission and approval, I don't just do it without that, but this recording device will record all the conversations, all the assessment meetings that I have, and it can transcribe the notes and even give me summaries of that if I want. So there's ways to be able to shortcut time and effort. And so in those conversations, you have this guiding set of questions that are going to help you be able to understand, could be issues related to strengths and weaknesses. So like a lot of schools will go through strategic planning processes, and they'll conduct focus group meetings to hear what key stakeholders are sharing about their school. Or there may be issues. So think about the preschool to kindergarten retention issue. So if I was working on that issue within a school, I would want to have a group, at least one group of preschool parents who potentially are not planning to continue on in kindergarten, because I want to hear their thought process. I want to hear, did they consider, continuing on, why they aren't, and really probe in a deeper way with some of those specific issues. So you could do that, within your school community, conduct these focus groups, and be able to understand what parents and other key stakeholders are sharing about the particular topic. The key in all the research, when it comes to qualitative research, so think back to those open-ended questions. Also think back to what we're talking about here in the focus groups. You're looking for an opportunity to be able to capture what people are saying. You want to organize that by topic, looking at key comments. The main thing that I'm looking for is patterns and themes. I'm not looking for the one irate parent who has their particular issue, although that's important to that one parent. I don't want to discount that. But it's different if one parent is talking about that issue versus 18. That's where you have a pattern or theme, and 18 is not the magic number. It kind of depends upon the school and the context. So I remember one school years ago I was working with, and I conducted a parent satisfaction survey and a series of focus groups. And what came out of the open-ended comments is that they had an issue with one of their teachers who had some health challenges, and was actually falling asleep in the class and was taking long breaks from the class. And apparently the administrative leadership wasn't completely aware of this, but it surfaced through the research. And then I had to share that with the leadership and they had to take action on it. So I never know what I'm going to find. Hopefully it's not something like that within your school community. But the key is you're looking for those patterns and themes so that you can address it, so that you can look at not only the negative and the challenges, but also the positives. Because if everyone's talking about this is a great area of your school, that's something then that I can take and translate into a marketing message to use. So the analyzing and the reporting. Using AI today is a great way to be able to help you with your research. I mean, you can use a tool like ChatGPT, for example, to help you generate survey questions. You may have, the framework in your mind, and you could empower ChatGPT with a set of prompts to be able to help you by creating the right questions without the bias in place. It can also help you with analyzing those open-ended questions. Let's say you're a school of 1,000 students and you conduct a parent satisfaction survey and there's some open-ended qualitative questions with 400 responses. That's a long time to sit through and go through and read every comment and to be able to count them. Well, you can train ChatGPT and other AI tools to be able to do that analysis for you. There's more to it than what I've just told you. You have to make sure you're doing it correctly in order to make sure you get the right output that you're looking for. But to summarize those findings, to look at your strategies that you want to put in place. And it's also important to share what you've learned and what's next. So that's where you're really starting to build that trust and demonstrate to your key stakeholders like your parents that their participation really does matter, because you're going to do something with it. You're going to summarize the key findings and share that story back to the parents. You're going to be transparent with them. Doesn't mean you have to share everything that surfaced in a survey. I always encourage school leaders to pick out areas of concern or areas that need improvement that you especially are going to work on. It would not help you if you chose an area that surfaced in a survey and you didn't do anything about it, but you told the parents that, we know you're concerned about this, but we're just not going to do anything about it. So that's not going to help you. You really need to act upon it, and that's where your action plan comes in place. And there's different ways that you can communicate, whether it's an email summary or a town hall type of presentation. Usually those town hall presentations have the potential to go in the wrong direction, so that may not be the best option. You could do a video message, and the head of school could provide a couple-minute summary of the survey results. You could include it in your annual report. You could share out some of the key stats in social media posts. You could use it as some information that you're sharing with new families. Like, for example, on your new family survey, you could actually share with your prospective parents, here are the main reasons why parents are choosing our school. Do you resonate with these reasons? And so it's important that you're sharing and you're using it, because a survey is no good if you're just doing a survey and the results are going to sit in a binder or you're never going to open up that file. You've got to use it. Another key component to your whole research process is actually where you can assess your processes and your strategies. And that's where you're doing a deep dive into your enrollment and marketing processes and strategies. It's going to help inform your plan. I mean, this is what I do day in and day out. We don't have time to go into this in depth, but if I was working with your school, I'd want to understand everything about the admissions process. I want to understand how families discover you. How are you generating leads? What happens when they go to your website? Is there a clear path for them to engage with you? What's the inquiry process look like? How many fields are required on your form? I just counted this for a school I'm doing an assessment on, 29 required fields. on their inquiry form. That's a lot. That's actually way too much. Ideally, it should be more about a handful. And then you go through the continuation of the process, looking at the campus visit experience, the application process, all the details along the way. The same with retention, the same with how you're using financial aid, of how you're marketing your school's price, and all your marketing strategies. So what's effective at generating those leads? How are you telling your story? What's working with your website? What's not working? These are all the types of questions that I really choose to probe in a deep way when I'm at a school. Really just sorting out my perspective on exactly what they're doing, what they're not doing in their enrollment and marketing effort. You can do this as well. Go through in detail, but you're going to have this bias because you're in it. And sometimes when you're in it, you can't see everything that you need to see. And so from time to time, that's where you can benefit from bringing in a consultant to be able to help you. I was recently at Kings Ridge Christian in Alpharetta, Georgia. Tony Fajardo is the new head of school, just was appointed earlier this year. This is now the third school that he's brought me in to go through this extensive process because he values that. It gives him a foundation for where we're at in the enrollment and marketing effort. It gives us a roadmap for what we need to do to move forward. I even do this for schools in a position of strength. When things are seemingly going well, you're on top, your enrollment may be full, you want to make sure that that's the case next year and the years beyond. So I've never found a school that has everything perfectly in order. There's always opportunities, and that's when I work through this comprehensive assessment. So again, you can do this, you could hire someone to do it, whether it's me or someone else. Again, I'm not trying to pitch you on me. That's not the purpose of this presentation. It's just to give you insight into what you need to be doing on a regular basis. And through that assessment, there's lots of areas that you can review. You could conduct a SWOT analysis of your enrollment and marketing effort, look at staffing and budget. How much are you dedicating to marketing strategies? From my perspective, it needs to be 1 to 3% of your operational budget. What are your sources for your inquiries? What about retention analysis, the research, all the marketing platforms? Are you using AI? Are you gearing up towards the use of AI in parent search? Parents are now starting to go to tools like ChatGPT to be able to investigate schools. They may even bypass Google alone. And so how are you gearing up for what you need to do there? In fact, Andy Lynch and I are working on some upcoming webinars on the topics of AI because you need to be aware of this. It's kind of like the whole transition that we had to the internet years ago and where websites were first on the scene, or when social media launched. It's a new area. We have to learn about it, and we have to understand how it's going to change our world in enrollment and marketing. But then as you develop your plan, basically you're taking all this research that you've gleaned, your assessment of your enrollment and marketing effort, and you're taking that and you're turning it into a real plan. So this is my 5-step process for putting a plan in place. So you conduct that research and the assessment. That's can be a comprehensive approach there in the beginning. Spend a lot of time on that, but that's going to help fuel everything that you see that follows. So it's going to make the process easier. So then you establish your goals. And then step 3, you're going to develop those strategies and processes that you're going to implement. What do you need to do to achieve those goals? So if your inquiries have been declining and you need to see growth, what strategies are going to make a difference in attracting more inquiries to your school? You might have to spend some money to be able to make a difference there. You're going to operationalize it. Step 4, so we're actually going to budget and make sure that it's aligned with staff responsibilities, and you're going to build out that calendar. I mean, in the bottom end of line here is, what is a plan? It's basically, what are you going to do? Who's going to do it? When are you going to do it? And how are you going to pay for it? That's like the simplest approach of putting a plan together. And then all along the way, you're going to monitor and you're going to adjust, because a plan is just a guiding roadmap. But as you know, when you travel down the road, you may veer and take a little different direction because of whatever's happening on your journey. The same is true in a school setting when you're looking at your enrollment and marketing plan. So here's an example, another potential example of actually a real life scenario where I have been called into a couple schools to help them. The challenge was a declining 8th to 9th grade retention, or not having it where they wanted it to be. And so they wanted to really look at what are the issues. And so that's where the research came in. So in both schools that I worked on this particular project, conducted a series of surveys. So how did I approach it? I did a middle school parent and a middle school student survey. And I used those surveys to be able to assess their interest in continuing on to high school. And so that gave me that insight. There's a lot of questions that helped to give me better understanding as to the reason why they either were continuing or unsure or not continuing. Also looked at issues like who's making the decision. You know, the assumption, for example, was that the students were driving the decision. What's interesting is that in both schools, with surveying the students and the parents from middle school, is that it was a combined decision. The parent and the child were making that decision together. So from that research came solutions, you know, that we needed to work on a preview program for the middle school families, looking at the next level and that transition. So there was a whole program built around that, and a bunch of other strategies as well. So it wasn't, this is a simplified view of it, just to give you an illustration of how you could take that feedback and turn it into action. And so they saw an increase in retention. And so not a guarantee, but it's a roadmap to be able to point you in the right direction for what you need to do. So you could look at other scenarios, and you may have a scenario, you know, and maybe it's a how you would build a strategy to grow the enrollment. You know, your head of school comes in and says, okay, this year's over, we had great success. Next year, I want 5% growth. What are you going to do? How are you going to prioritize what research that needs to be conducted? Any data that's going to help guide you? What are ultimately going to be those strategies that are going to help you achieve that enrollment growth? I guarantee you it's not going to be one magical solution. There's going to be a comprehensive set of strategies that you're going to want to put in place. And you see some other examples there that, you know, you may want to think about. And you might have your own situation, your own challenge that's unique to your school, that I could help you think through. You know, again, that's what I do day in and day out in my work with schools. And it's, again, it's never a magic wand that you can wave and you can say, if I only do this, it's going to make a difference in my enrollment and marketing effort. Like I've had schools come to me and they want me to help them with variable tuition because they feel like variable tuition is going to be the magical solution to help move them forward. Well, it may be one, but there's usually 9 other strategies that need to be built in to that comprehensive approach. So I want you to get your thinking around this whole concept of using research, using an assessment. If you do the hard work there, it's going to help build into what you need to do in your planning process. So, you know, what's your biggest enrollment question or challenge that needs to be addressed in your school? So that's a starting point. And so once you determine what that is, then you can take that and you can build from there by doing the research, by looking at the planning, and hopefully achieving your goals along the way. So if I can help you think through your biggest question or your challenge and how you would actually tackle this, I would be grateful for that opportunity to have that conversation. Again, I do that all the time. You may have a question for me today. Feel free to drop it in the question box. Maybe it's an enrollment challenge you're facing and you're just looking for wisdom as to how you would potentially address that within your school. As you're thinking about that and any questions that may come in, I just want to encourage you to think about, obviously you're following me, you're listening to me, If there's any way that I can help you, this is my expertise. This is what I do day in and day out. And so if I can come alongside of your school and help you with your research efforts, whether it's surveys or focus groups or the assessment of your enrollment and marketing effort, I'm glad to do that. Had a lot of great experiences with schools that I partnered with around the country. In fact, just this week, I've had like 3 schools reach out to me that want to do a new parent survey right now. Another couple schools are planning for additional surveys later on this fall, like a net promoter score survey. Another school is even planning for the spring, and so of what they want me to do for them. So glad to help with that. Just a realistic overview of how I price my program with my surveys. So you could hire me just to do one survey for you. It's $850. You could hire me to do the 5 course surveys that I talked about earlier. In that case, it's a package. And so you get one survey for free. And so the total cost is $3,400. You get the 5 surveys, and it's all unique to your school. There's a starting set of questions, but it's fully customizable to your school and your situation. And I get great response. I manage the process, provide you with the report. You can also hire me to do the analysis for you, and I've done that for schools. But again, whether you hire me or not, that's not the main focus here. It's to really look at building research into your program. So, if I can help you in any way, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be grateful for that opportunity. We actually have a couple questions coming in, and Tasha's asking, how do you assess the school culture? That's a great question. I would think you would need to actually build out a specific survey around your school culture to get them to be able to evaluate it. I was actually just playing around with this idea recently. I'm thinking about offering that type of a survey for schools that they could, partner with me on. So I don't have all the answers for you right now, but it would be a combination of a survey that they could do electronically online, as well as focus groups. What is culture? It's how you operate. It's the feel. It's the experience. So some of the satisfaction questions would help to give you insight into the overall culture of the school. Liz is asking, do I have a sample satisfaction school survey for parents, staff, and students? I've developed all those. I can't just freely give out my surveys that I've developed, but if you want to have a conversation with me, I'm glad to show you some of the types of questions that I ask along the way, and I'm glad to do that. Erica is asking, we're a Montessori school, struggling with retention from 3rd to 4th grade and 8th to 7th. I'm sorry, 6th to 8th to 7th. That makes a lot of sense. That was my mistake. 6th to 7th to other private schools. So that's a challenge, certainly. And I'd recommend that you spend some time with those surveys and focus groups, getting that insight into what's going on. Why aren't they staying? What's affecting the overall retention within your school community? And that's where you would then be informed about anything you may need to change. So it could be issues with your program that need to be changed. Maybe it's issues with the way you're internally marketing the continuation there at your school. Maybe it's dispelling some of the issues related to a Montessori education. Parents may have the idea that Montessori is for younger kids. So how can you dispel that issue? Well, it'd be communicating the success of your graduates who've stayed all the way through. It'd be telling stories of other people who have gone through a Montessori program and they've been successful in life. So you get the idea as to how you might be able to address that, Erica. Great question. But again, if I can help you in any way at your school, I'd be grateful for that opportunity. Hopefully this webinar has given you insight into the type of research through surveys and focus groups that you can conduct, your approach to be able to do that, maybe even a roadmap for how you can implement this year. And then the assessment of how that's going to inform your enrollment and marketing plan, so that you can take the next steps, so that you can showcase this to your head of school, your leadership team, your board, that you have an actionable plan in place that's been based and rooted in what you found in research. So thanks for joining me through this webinar, and be grateful for the opportunity to be able to talk to you further. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. Until the next time, we'll see you again. Thank you.